Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The golden Napa Valley sun spilled like honey over rolling hills, casting long shadows across the Moretti estate's vineyard. Rows of grapevines stretched wide, their leaves shimmering in the late afternoon breeze. The air carried the sweet tang of ripening fruit and the faint musk of oak barrels aging in the winery nearby. At the heart of the estate, a sprawling stone villa with ivy-covered walls stood ready for a wedding that was anything but ordinary. Lena Carter, 27, stood in the bridal suite, her reflection staring back from a floor-length mirror framed in wrought iron. The white silk gown hugged her curves, its delicate magnolia embroidery catching the light like moonlight on water. Her curly hair cascaded over her shoulders, a few strands pinned back with tiny pearl clips. Around her neck hung a silver pendant shaped like an oak tree, a gift from her grandmother back in Chicago's Bronzeville, a reminder of resilience. Lena's deep brown skin glowed under the soft light, but her hands trembled as she adjusted the dress. This wasn't how she'd pictured her wedding day. Lena wasn't the fairy tale type. Growing up in a tight-knit black family in Chicago, she'd spent her childhood sketching jewelry designs while her mom, Karen, played Nina Simone records in their cramped apartment. She'd fought her way through art school on scholarships, turning her passion into a budding career as a jewelry designer. But love, that was trickier. Kyle, her boyfriend of 4 years, was steady, reliable, if not exactly thrilling. He'd proposed 6 months ago with a simple gold band, promising a future together. So why was her stomach twisting now? Her phone buzzed on the vanity. A text from Kyle. Flight delayed, storm in Chicago. Follow the planner's lead. Lena, I'll make it. His voice had sounded rushed over the phone that morning, clipped in a way that made her frown. She glanced at the ring on her finger, its plain design suddenly feeling heavier. "He'll be here," she muttered, trying to shake the sinking feeling in her chest. A sharp knock broke her thoughts. Julia, the petite wedding planner with a clipboard and a nervous smile, poked her head in. "Miss Carter, it's time Mrs. Sophia Moretti is waiting." Her voice carried a hint of urgency, like she was scared of upsetting someone powerful. Lena nodded, smoothing her dress one last time. She took a deep breath, the scent of lavender from a nearby candle calming her nerves, and stepped out, unaware she was walking into a trap. The ceremony unfolded in the vineyard, where white silk ribbons fluttered from wooden arches and long tables gleamed with silverware. Guests in glamorous attire, suits, sequined dresses, wide-brimmed hats, chatted over glasses of ruby-red wine. The air buzzed with laughter and the soft strains of a jazz violin quartet, their notes weaving through the warm breeze. It was beautiful, Lena thought, but something felt off, like a melody played in the wrong key. She was led to a small table draped in white silk, where a tall man in a tailored black suit waited. He had neatly combed dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and deep brown eyes that held a stern intensity. His faint smile seemed forced, like he wasn't entirely comfortable either. Lena glanced at her mom, Karen, standing nearby in a teal dress, her brow furrowed. "Is that the groom?" Lena whispered, her heart skipping. Karen shrugged, adjusting her glasses. "Kyle said he sent someone to stand in since his flight got delayed. Must be a friend or cousin." Lena opened her mouth to ask more, but Julia ushered her forward, clipboard in hand. The officiant, a gray-haired man with a gravelly voice, read the vows in English, his words blending with the hum of the crowd. Lena repeated them, her voice steady but detached, like she was reading lines in a play. The man across from her responded in a low, firm tone, his eyes flickering with something hesitation. Guilt. She couldn't tell, when it came time to sign the marriage certificate. Lena paused. The document was crisp, the ink still fresh, but the weight of Julia's stare and the crowd's applause pushed her hand. She signed her signature, looping across the page. The man signed too, his pen moving slowly as if he were wrestling with something inside. The crowd erupted in cheers, but a chill ran through Lena. Something wasn't right. The reception kicked off in a grand open-air pavilion, its wooden beams draped with fairy lights that twinkled like stars. Guests mingled their voices, rising over the clink of glasses and the soulful beat of a live jazz band. Lena tried to blend in, sipping a glass of Moretti Cabernet, its rich berry notes lingering on her tongue, but her eyes kept darting to her phone. No calls, no texts. She dialed Kyle once, twice, then a third time straight to voicemail. Her texts piled up. "Kyle, where are you? What's going on? Call me now." Nothing. Karen, tipsy from wine, pulled her onto the dance floor, her laughter bright. "Come on, baby girl, shake it like we're back in Bronzeville." But Lena slipped away, her heels clicking on the stone path as she found a quiet corner. She tried Kyle again. Still nothing. Her chest tightened, the pendant around her neck feeling like a weight. She wove through the crowd, her gown brushing against silk dresses and tailored suits, and accidentally bumped into the man in the black suit, the stand-in groom. He stood alone, holding a glass of wine, his eyes fixed on her with a mix of curiosity and something deeper. "Sorry," Lena said, awkward, brushing a curl behind her ear. "And, thanks for helping today. Kyle should be here soon." The man furrowed his brow, setting his glass down on a nearby table. His voice was low, his English flawless, but tinged with a faint Italian accent. "Helping? What are you talking about?" "Miss Carter." Lena blinked, a cold chill crawling down her spine. "Aren't you the guy Kyle sent to stand in for him at the wedding?" He shook his head, his expression shifting from curious to stunned. "Stand in?" "No, I'm Matteo Moretti. My mother, Sophia, said you were my bride. I thought you knew." He paused, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a folded copy of the marriage certificate. Lena's name was written next to Matteo Moretti's, their signatures binding them legally. "We're married according to this." Lena laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound that drew glances from nearby guests. "Married? No. This is crazy. I'm marrying Kyle, not you." She snatched the paper, her hands shaking as she read. The truth hit like a punch to the gut. Her name, her signature, all real. She fumbled for her phone, scrolling through Kyle's messages. A new one popped up. "Lena, I'm sorry. The company's going under. I needed the Moretti contract. Stay in Napa a few months. I'll explain later." The world spun. "Kyle, what the hell have you done?" she whispered, her voice breaking. She looked up at Matteo, her eyes blazing. Did you know I wasn't supposed to be your bride?" Matteo stared at her, confusion etched across his face. "No, I didn't know. My mother told me you were Lena Carter, the bride chosen to secure the Moretti inheritance. I didn't want this, but she insisted." He clenched his glass, his voice dropping. "Are you saying you had no idea I was the groom?" Lena nodded, tears stinging her eyes. She held up her phone, showing him Kyle's message. "He used me for his damn company." Her voice cracked raw with betrayal. Matteo read the text, his jaw tightening, eyes darkening like a storm rolling in. "My mother and your boyfriend orchestrated this. If what you're saying is true, we've both been played." He paused, his tone turning cold. "But now, under the Moretti family contract, we have to live as husband and wife for 6 months to fulfill the inheritance clause. Otherwise, my mother will make our lives a living hell." Lena clutched her phone, her hands shaking. The jazz band played on their saxophone, weaving a sultry melody, but her world had just collapsed. She hadn't just married the wrong man. She and Matteo had been betrayed by the people they trusted most. Fury and heartbreak churned inside her. She couldn't stay here surrounded by strangers clapping for a lie. "I need air," she muttered, pushing past Matteo. Her heels sank into the soft earth as she stormed toward the vineyard, the rows of grapevines stretching into the darkness. The moon hung low, its silver light painting the leaves in ghostly hues. Crickets chirped their hum, blending with the distant music. But Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. Matteo followed his footsteps steady behind her. "Lena, wait!" He called, his voice softer now, almost pleading. She spun around, her curls bouncing the silk gown, catching the moonlight and outlining her silhouette. "Don't," she snapped, pointing a finger at him. "Don't act like you're the victim here." "Moretti, you knew something was off, didn't you? And you still went through with it." Her voice trembled raw with anger, her pendant glinting as her chest heaved. Matteo stopped a few feet away, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a sliver of tanned skin. The moonlight carved shadows across his face, making his eyes look deeper, more dangerous. "I didn't know, Lena," he said, his voice low, steady. "My mother said you agreed to this. I thought you were in on it just like me, but I swear I'm as trapped as you are." "Trapped?" Lena laughed bitterly, stepping closer, her heels crunching on the dirt. "You're a Moretti. This is your world. Vineyards, villas, power plays. I'm just a girl from Bronzeville who got played by her boyfriend and your mama. Don't talk to me about trapped." Matteo's eyes flashed, but not with anger. Something else, something that made Lena's breath catch. He closed the distance between them, his presence overwhelming, the faint scent of his cologne, sandalwood and cedar mixing with the earthy tang of the vineyard. "You think I wanted this?" he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "To marry a stranger, to play my mother's games. I'm fighting for my place in this family. Lena, just like you're fighting for yours." Her heart pounded, his words hitting too close to home. She opened her mouth to fire back, but his gaze locked onto hers, intense, unyielding. The air between them crackled, charged with something she couldn't name. Before she could react, Matteo reached out his hand, grazing her bare shoulder. His touch warm against her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. "You're not just a girl from Bronzeville," he murmured, his voice rough. "You're a damn wildfire." And then he kissed her. His lips were soft but urgent, pressing against hers, with a hunger that stole her breath. The world tilted, the vineyard fading as her senses drowned in him. The heat of his mouth, the faint taste of wine on his tongue, the way his hand slid to her lower back, pulling her closer. Lena's hands instinctively gripped his shirt, her fingers brushing the hard lines of his chest. The cricket's hum became a distant buzz, drowned out by the thump of her heart and the soft rasp of their breaths mingling. His cologne enveloped her, grounding her, even as her mind spun. For a moment, she kissed him back, her body betraying her anger, her lips moving against his with a need she didn't understand. But reality crashed in like a cold wave. She pushed him away, stumbling back, her lips tingling, her chest heaving. "What the hell was that?" she demanded, her voice shaky, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Matteo stood frozen, his eyes wide, like he was as shocked as she was. I don't know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I saw you, and I couldn't stop myself." "Don't," Lena said, her voice sharp though her body still hummed from his touch. "Don't think a kiss fixes this. I'm not your wife, Moretti, and I'm not staying in this mess." She turned her gown, swishing as she stormed back toward the villa, the moonlight casting her shadow, long and defiant. Inside her room, Lena locked the door, her hands trembling as she sank onto the bed. The pendant at her neck felt heavy, grounding her. She touched her lips, still warm from Matteo's kiss, and cursed under her breath. Kyle's betrayal stung, but Matteo's kiss, unplanned, reckless, had lit something inside her she wasn't ready to face. She stared out the window at the vineyard, its silver-lit rose stretching into the night. She could run, leave Napa and this fake marriage behind. But something, curiosity, anger, or maybe that damn kiss told her to stay, to find the truth. To fight Lena Carter wasn't the type to back down. If Kyle and Sophia Moretti thought they could play her, they were about to learn who they were dealing with. Whoa, that kiss between Lena and Matteo just turned everything upside down. Will they fall for each other or fight their way out of this drama? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment to let us know what you think happens next. Don't miss a second of this fiery love story. The Moretti estate woke with the soft hum of Napa Valley mornings, birds chirping in the vineyards, the faint clink of wine bottles being stacked in the cellar, and the golden sunlight filtering through white silk curtains. Lena Carter still reeling from the fake wedding. And that kiss 2 nights ago stood in the villa's grand kitchen, determined to take back some control. Her curls were pulled into a messy bun, and she wore a black tank top tucked into ripped jeans, her oak tree pendant glinting at her throat. The scent of coffee filled the air, but Lena was on a mission to cook something that screamed her. She'd grown up in Chicago's Bronzeville, where her grandma's kitchen was a sanctuary of soul food, fried chicken, cornbread, collard greens, all served with love and a side of Erykah Badu on the radio. If she was stuck in this fancy-ass vineyard for 6 months, she wasn't about to survive on Matteo Moretti's boring salads and artisanal cheese. She cracked eggs into a bowl, the shells snapping under her fingers, and started whisking the rhythm grounding her. But her mind kept drifting to Matteo, his deep brown eyes, the way his hand had felt on her back, the heat of his lips under the moonlight. She shook her head, muttering, "Get it together, Lena. He's not your man." The kitchen, with its marble counters and gleaming copper pots, was a far cry from her mom's tiny apartment back home. She'd found a bag of cornmeal in the pantry, probably meant for some bougie polenta dish, and decided to make cornbread. But as she poured batter into a sizzling skillet, the smoke alarm blared a piercing wail that made her jump. "Oh, come on," she groaned, fanning the air with a dish towel. The skillet hissed the batter, turning black at the edges. Footsteps echoed on the tile floor. Matteo appeared in the doorway, his white dress shirt rolled up to his elbows, dark hair still damp from a shower. The faint scent of his sandalwood cologne hit her, and damn if it didn't make her heart skip. "What's burning?" he asked. One eyebrow raised, his voice calm, but laced with amusement. "Nothing's burning," Lena snapped, tossing the towel onto the counter. "I'm just experimenting with setting the villa on fire." He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe, his lips twitching like he was fighting a smile. The morning light slanted through the window, catching the sharp angles of his jaw, and Lena hated how good he looked. "Chill. Moretti," she said, turning back to the skillet, her cheeks warm. "I'm bringing a little Chicago to your fancy Napa life. You ever had cornbread? Not the kind that triggers alarms," he said, stepping closer. He peered into the skillet, his shoulder brushing hers, sending a jolt through her. "You sure this is edible?" Lena glared, pointing a spatula at him. "Keep talking, and you won't get a bite. I'm not here to play perfect wife for you or your mama's contract." Matteo's smile faded, his eyes softening. "I know you're not, Lena, and I'm not asking you to." His voice was quieter now, almost gentle, and it threw her off. For a moment they stood there, the air between them heavy, the memory of their kiss hanging like a ghost. She turned away, focusing on scraping the charred batter into the trash. "Whatever, just stay out of my kitchen." "It's my kitchen," he said, but there was no bite in it. He grabbed a coffee mug from the counter, his fingers brushing hers as he passed, and Lena's skin tingled. She cursed under her breath. This man was trouble, and she wasn't about to let him or that kiss mess with her head. Life at the Moretti estate settled into a tense, chaotic rhythm. Lena claimed the villa's library as her jewelry studio, spreading gemstones and sketches across a mahogany table. Much to Matteo's annoyance, "This is a library, not a craft room," he'd grumbled, eyeing the glitter dusting his precious books. Lena had just smirked, twirling a pencil. "Relax, Moretti. Nobody's reading these dusty tomes anyway." He'd stormed off, but she'd caught the faintest twitch of his lips, like he was secretly amused. She spent her days designing her fingers, shaping silver wire into delicate rings inspired by the vineyard's curves. Music was her lifeline. SZA's smooth vocals, or Alicia Keys' soulful piano, blasting through her earbuds, pulling her back to Bronzeville, to the girl who'd dreamed big despite the odds. But every time Matteo passed by his cologne, lingering, or his voice calling her name, her focus shattered. She hated how he got under her skin, how his presence felt like a spark waiting to ignite. Jada Williams, her best friend since high school, kept her grounded. Jada, a chef at a soul food spot in downtown Napa, called every night, her voice crackling through FaceTime. "Girl, you're living in a soap opera." Jada said, her braids swinging as she chopped collards in her restaurant's kitchen. "Fake husband, shady ex, and a kiss. You still won't spill the tea on." "You're wildin'. There's no tea," Lena lied, twisting her pendant. "It was a mistake. Matteo's just complicated." "Complicated and fine as hell," Jada teased, smirking. "Watch yourself, Lena. Don't let that Napa wine and those Italian eyes make you soft." Lena laughed, but Jada's words stuck. She wasn't going soft. Not for Matteo, not for anyone. Kyle's betrayal still burned, and Sophia Moretti's cold stare at breakfast every morning reminded her this was a game she'd play along, but on her terms. The tension between Lena and Matteo came to a head at the Napa Valley Wine Festival, a glitzy event hosted at the estate. The vineyard buzzed with energy, strings of golden lanterns swaying in the breeze. Long tables piled with charcuterie and crystal wine glasses, and a live jazz band filling the air with sultry saxophone notes. Guests in tailored suits and flowing dresses mingled their laughter, rising over the clink of glasses. The scent of oak-aged Cabernet and wood smoke from nearby fire pits hung heavy, wrapping the night in warmth. Lena had dressed to kill, her black silk dress hugging her curves, the neckline dipping just enough to turn heads. Her curls bounced free, and she'd swapped her pendant for a bold silver choker she'd designed herself, its geometric lines catching the lantern light. She wasn't here to play the dutiful wife, but to remind everyone, especially Matteo, she was Lena Carter, not some pawn in Sophia's scheme. She was sipping a glass of Merlot, the wine's tart cherry notes dancing on her tongue, when Vivian Harper sauntered over. The blonde businesswoman, a key partner in the Moretti wine empire, wore a red dress so tight it looked painted on her heels, clicking like a warning. Her green eyes scanned Lena, a smirk playing on her lips. "Lena Carter, right?" Vivian said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. The Chicago girl who stumbled into a Moretti wedding. Must be quite the culture shock. All this sophistication. Lena raised an eyebrow, setting her glass down. "Culture shock?" "Nah, Vivienne. I grew up in Bronzeville. I can handle a little Napa glitz. Question is, can you handle me?" She flashed a smile, sharp and confident, drawing a few curious glances from nearby guests. Vivienne's smirk faltered, but she recovered, tossing her hair. "Oh, I'm not worried. Matteo needs someone who fits this world. Someone established." She leaned closer, her perfume, something floral and overpowering, cloying. "You're just a placeholder, sweetheart." Lena's fingers tightened around her glass, but before she could fire back, Matteo appeared, his navy suit tailored to perfection, his eyes locking onto her. "Lena, he said, his voice low, ignoring Vivian. "You look incredible." The way he said it, like he couldn't tear his gaze away, made her stomach flip. Vivian's smile tightened. "Matteo, we were just discussing the new distribution deal," she purred, resting a hand on his arm. "You and I should talk strategy later. Alone." Lena's jaw clenched, a spark of something hot jealousy flaring in her chest. She hated that it bothered her. Hated that Vivian's touch on Matteo's arm made her want to step between them. "Y'all go ahead and talk your business." Lena said, her tone cool but edged. "I'm good right here." She turned her dress swishing and headed toward the dance floor, determined to shake off whatever this feeling was. The jazz band shifted into a slower, sultrier tune, the saxophone weaving a melody that felt like a warm embrace. Lena swayed to the rhythm, letting the music pull her back to Chicago to nights dancing with Jada at blues clubs. She closed her eyes, the lantern's golden glow filtering through her lids, the wine's warmth spreading through her veins. For a moment she was free. Then she felt him, Matteo's presence unmistakable before he even spoke. She opened her eyes, and there he was, standing too close, his cologne wrapping around her like a spell. "Dance with me," he said. Not a question. His hand extended. "I don't dance with fake husbands," Lena shot back, but her voice lacked conviction. The crowd around them blurred, the lanterns casting a soft halo over his face. "Just one dance," he said, his eyes searching hers. "No contract, no games, just you and me." She hesitated, her heart pounding. Against her better judgment, she took his hand, his fingers warm and firm, sending a shiver up her arm. He pulled her close, one hand on her lower back, the silk of her dress sliding under his touch. They moved to the music, their bodies swaying in sync, the saxophone's notes curling around them like smoke. The vineyard faded, leaving only the heat of his hand, the rhythm of his breath, the way his eyes never left hers. "You didn't have to shut Vivian down like that," Matteo murmured, his voice low, his lips close to her ear. "But I'm glad you did." Lena tilted her head, meeting his gaze, her choker glinting. "I didn't do it for you, Moretti. I did it for me. Vivian doesn't scare me." "I know," he said, his hand tightening slightly on her back, pulling her closer. "That's what makes you dangerous." Her breath caught the word, dangerous, sparking something reckless inside her. The music slowed, the lantern swaying above, casting golden flecks across his face. She should pull away, walk off this dance floor, keep her walls up. But his touch, his voice, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world made her dizzy. Then it happened. Lena, reaching for a glass of wine from a passing waiter, misjudged her step. The glass tipped red wine splashing across Matteo's crisp white shirt, a crimson stain blooming like a wound. "Oh, shit," she gasped, grabbing a napkin, her cheeks burning. "I'm so sorry." Matteo laughed, a low, genuine sound that caught her off guard. "It's just a shirt, Lena," he said, but his eyes sparkled with mischief. He took the napkin from her, his fingers brushing hers, lingering a beat too long. "Let me clean up. Come with me." Before she could protest, he led her away from the crowd, through a side path lined with grapevines, the lantern's glow fading behind them. They stopped in a quiet corner of the vineyard, where a small stone bench sat under a canopy of leaves. The night air was cool, carrying the earthy scent of soil and the faint sweetness of grapes. The saxophone's notes drifted faintly, a seductive hum that matched the pulse in Lena's veins. Matteo unbuttoned his shirt part-way, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin and muscle, and dabbed at the stain. Lena tried not to stare, but her eyes betrayed her, tracing the lines of his chest. "You're making this worse," she said, snatching the napkin. "Let me." She stepped closer, her hands moving to wipe the wine, her fingers brushing his skin through the thin fabric. His breath hitched, and she froze, realizing how close they were. The moonlight filtered through the vines, casting silver shadows across his face, his eyes dark and intense. "Lena," he said, his voice rough, almost a growl. "You're killing me." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Good," she whispered, but her voice trembled. She should step back, put distance between them, but her body had other ideas. The napkin fell to the ground, forgotten, as Matteo's hand found her waist, his touch searing through the silk of her dress. He pulled her closer, their bodies inches apart, the air between them. Electric. "Your trouble, Carter," he murmured, his lips hovering over hers, his breath warm against her skin. The scent of wine and cedar enveloped her, dizzying, intoxicating. "And you're a damn problem, Moretti." She shot back, but her hands were on his chest, now feeling the heat of him, the steady thump of his heart. He kissed her, and the world ignited. His lips were soft but demanding, moving against hers with a hunger that stole her breath. The kiss was slow at first, exploratory, like he was savoring her, but it deepened his tongue, brushing hers, sending sparks down her spine. Her hands slid up, fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. His hands roamed her back, tracing the curve of her spine, the silk dress sliding under his touch. The saxophone's melody wove through the air, its low notes matching the rhythm of their breaths, the vineyard's quiet hum, fading to nothing. Lena tasted wine on his lips, felt the heat of his body pressed against hers. And for a moment she forgot everything. Kyle, the contract, the lies. But reality crashed in. She pushed him away, her chest heaving, her lips tingling. "We can't do this," she said, her voice shaky, stepping back. Her choker felt tight, her skin still burning where his hands had been. "This, whatever this is, it's not real." Matteo's eyes were dark, his breath ragged. "It felt real to me," he said, his voice low, raw. He took a step toward her, but she held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't," she said, her voice firmer now. "I'm not your wife, Matteo, and I'm not falling for you just because you kiss like that." She turned her heels, sinking into the dirt, and walked back toward the festival, the lantern's glow guiding her. Her heart pounded her body, still humming with the memory of his touch, but she refused to look back in her room. Lena kicked off her heels, the silk dress pooling on the floor. She sank onto the bed, her phone lighting up with a FaceTime call from Jada girl. "You okay?" Jada asked, her braids swinging as she stirred a pot of gumbo in her restaurant's kitchen. "You look like you just ran a marathon." Lena touched her lips, still warm from Matteo's kiss. "I'm fine," she lied, twisting her pendant. "Just surviving." Jada raised an eyebrow. "Spill the tea." "Lena, something's got you shook." Lena shook her head, forcing a laugh. "No tea, Jay. Just a long night." But as she ended the call, she couldn't shake the truth. Matteo Moretti was dangerous not because of the contract or his family, but because every time he touched her she felt a fire she wasn't sure she could control. And in this game of lies, that fire might just burn her down. The Napa Valley air carried a crisp edge as autumn settled over the Moretti estate, the vineyard's leaves turning shades of amber and crimson. Mornings began with fog rolling over the hills, draping the grapevines in a ghostly veil, while the scent of damp earth and fermenting wine hung heavy. Lena Carter woke each day with a fire in her chest, determined to carve out her space in this strange, gilded cage. But the memory of Matteo Moretti's kiss at the wine festival, a searing, reckless moment that still burned her lips, kept her on edge like a song stuck on repeat. Lena stood in the villa's library, her makeshift jewelry studio surrounded by sketches and gemstones scattered across a mahogany table. Her curls were tied back with a silk scarf, and she wore a fitted black sweater tucked into high-waisted jeans, her oak tree pendant glinting at her throat. The morning light streamed through tall windows, casting golden pools on the hardwood floor. She was shaping a silver ring, its delicate vines inspired by the vineyard outside, when her phone buzzed, a text from Jada, her best friend. "Girl, you still alive in that fancy vineyard? Call me, I need the tea on Mr. Italian Eyes." Lena smirked, setting down her pliers. Jada's voice, sharp, Chicago-born and always ready to call her out, was a lifeline. But what could she say? That she'd kissed Matteo twice now, each one leaving her more confused, that she was stuck in a fake marriage, fighting feelings she had no business having. She typed a quick reply. "I'm good. Jay, call you tonight," and turned up her playlist, SZA's smooth vocals filling the room. Music was her anchor, pulling her back to Bronzeville, to the girl who'd sketched designs under her grandma's kitchen table while collards simmered on the stove. The past week had been a tightrope walk. Lena and Matteo moved around each other like magnets drawn together, but always pulling back. He'd catch her eye at breakfast, his gaze lingering a beat too long, and she'd feel that spark again, the one she was trying damn hard to ignore. They bickered over everything, her messy studio, his obsession with schedules, the way she blasted R&B in a house built for classical piano. But beneath the arguments, there was something else, a current, a pull, like they were both fighting the same gravity. Yesterday, she'd caught him fixing a bookshelf she'd accidentally knocked askew in the library. His sleeves rolled up, sweat beading on his brow. "You don't have to do that," she'd said, crossing her arms. He'd glanced up, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "Someone's got to keep this place from falling apart." Carter. The way he'd said her name low and teasing had sent a shiver down her spine. She'd walked away muttering about his control freak vibes, but her heart had been racing. Now, as she worked on her ring, the library door creaked open. Malik Jackson, the vineyard's manager, stepped in, his work boots scuffing the floor, a black man in his early 30s. Malik had a warm smile and eyes that saw more than he let on. He'd been kind to Lena from day one, slipping her extra cornbread from the kitchen and sharing stories about growing up in Oakland. "Morning, Lena," he said, holding a steaming mug of coffee. "You making magic in here again?" "Trying to," she said, grinning. "What's good? Malik, you sneaking me some of that gumbo you promised?" He laughed, setting the mug down. "Soon, I swear. But, I wanted to talk about Matteo." His tone shifted serious now, and Lena's stomach tightened. She turned off her music, the silence heavy. "What about him?" she asked, leaning against the table, her pendant cool against her skin. Malik hesitated, glancing at the door like he was checking for eavesdroppers. "Look, I've worked here 5 years. Matteo's a good guy, but he's caught in his mama's web, same as you. That contract you signed, Sophia's got him on a leash, but he didn't know the full story about you." "Not at first." Lena's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, not at first?" Malik sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Matteo's adopted. The Morettis took him in when he was a kid, but some of the family, Sophia included, never let him forget he's not blood. This whole marriage thing, it's a test from his grandpa Giovanni to prove Matteo's worthy of the estate. But Sophia, she's playing dirty. I overheard her talking about a deal with your ex, Kyle. Matteo signed something, but he thought you were in on it." Lena's heart sank, her fingers tightening around her pliers. "He knew I didn't agree to this." Her voice was sharp, but beneath it, hurt bloomed like a bruise. "Not exactly," Malik said quickly. He found out after the wedding when you showed him Kyle's text. But Sophia's got him cornered. If he breaks the contract, she'll tank his inheritance and maybe your career too. I'm just saying. He's not the bad guy here. Lena stared at the ring on the table, its silver vines gleaming. Malik's words made sense, but they didn't erase the sting of betrayal. Matteo had known she was trapped at least part way and hadn't told her. Was he protecting her like Malik said, or just playing along to save his own skin? She forced a smile, her voice tight. Thanks, Malik. I appreciate the heads up. He nodded, his eyes soft with understanding. You're tough, Lena. Tougher than this place. Just be careful. He left the door clicking shut, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the faint hum of the vineyard outside. Lena tried to focus on her work, but Malik's words gnawed at her. She saw Matteo differently now. Not just the polished heir, but a man carrying the weight of a family that didn't fully claim him. It made her think of her own fights, clawing her way through art school, proving she belonged in rooms where people like Vivian Harper looked down their noses. Maybe she and Matteo weren't so different. The thought unsettled her, softening the edges of her anger. That evening she found him in the vineyard checking the grapes under the fading light. He wore a gray Henley, sleeves pushed up his hands stained with earth. The sunset painted the hills in hues of peach and lavender, the air cool and sweet. Hey, she called, her boots crunching on the dirt path. Got a minute? Matteo looked up, his eyes lighting up in a way that made her heart skip, for you always. He wiped his hands on a rag, stepping closer. The scent of soil and cedar clung to him, grounding and intoxicating. Lena crossed her arms, her sweater soft against her skin. Malik told me about you, the adoption, the family drama. Why didn't you say anything? His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. It's not exactly first date material, Lena. And we're not exactly dating. His voice was low, tinged with something raw. Vulnerability, maybe? She stepped closer, her pendant catching the last rays of sunlight. We're stuck in this mess together. Matteo, you could have trusted me. He held her gaze, the vineyard's quiet wrapping around them. I wanted to, but every time I tried, I saw you fierce, unstoppable, and I didn't want to drag you into my family's bullshit. You deserve better than that. Her throat tightened, his words hitting deeper than she expected. For a moment, she saw the boy he'd been fighting for a place in a world that didn't want him. She reached out her hand, brushing his arm, the warmth of his skin sending a jolt through her. You don't get to decide what I deserve, she said softly. Tell me the truth. Matteo always. He nodded, his hand covering hers, his touch steady. I will. I promise. The sunset glowed behind him, and for a heartbeat Lena felt something shift, a connection fragile but real. That fragile trust shattered the next morning. Lena was in the library sketching a new necklace when the door slammed open. Luca Moretti, Matteo's cousin, stormed in, his blonde hair, disheveled, his eyes cold with spite. He was tall, lean, and carried the kind of arrogance that came with being a true Moretti. Lena Carter, he said, tossing a folder onto her table, scattering her sketches. You're dumber than I thought, if you believe Matteo's playing the victim. Lena stood, her jaw tight. What the hell's your problem, Luca? He smirked, folding his arms. My problem is you and Matteo thinking you can waltz into this family's legacy. Read that. He nodded at the folder. It's the real contract, the one Matteo signed before your little wedding. Her stomach dropped. She opened the folder, her hands trembling as she scanned the document. It was a legal agreement signed by Matteo and Sophia, stating he'd uphold the marriage with Lena Carter for 6 months, regardless of her consent, in exchange for the Moretti inheritance and a payment to Kyle. The words blurred her heart pounding, Matteo had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. He'd known she was a pawn and kept her here anyway. "You're lying," she said, her voice shaking, but the signatures were real. Matteo's bold scrawl, Sophia's precise flourish. She looked up at Luca, her eyes blazing. "Why should I trust you? You're just stirring shit." Luca shrugged, his smirk widening. "Don't trust me. Trust the paper Matteo's been playing you, same as Sophia. Those kisses, just part of the act to keep you in line." He turned and left his laughter echoing in the hall. Lena sank into a chair, the folder slipping to the floor. Her chest ached like someone had ripped out a piece of her. She'd started to believe in Matteo, to see him as more than the contract, more than the lies. But this was betrayal. Sharp and cold, cutting deeper than Kyle's ever had. She found Matteo in the villa's living room that night, the fire in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. He was in a black sweater, sipping a glass of wine, his eyes distant. The room smelled of cedar and smoke, the crackle of burning logs filling the silence. Lena stood in the doorway, her red dress clinging to her curves, her curls loose, her pendant heavy at her throat. The folder was clutched in her hand, her knuckles white. "Read this," she said, throwing it onto the coffee table, her voice sharp as a blade. "And tell me it's not true." Matteo's eyes snapped to her, then to the folder. He set his glass down, his movements slow, deliberate. As he read, his face hardened, pain flashing in his eyes. "Lena," he started, standing, but she cut him off. "Don't," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "You knew, Matteo. You knew I didn't sign up for this, and you still kept me here, for your damn inheritance. Were the kisses part of the plan too? Keep me distracted so I wouldn't run?" "No," he said, stepping toward her, his voice urgent. "Lena, listen. My mother forced me to sign that before the wedding. She said if I didn't, she'd destroy you, your career, your reputation. I thought I was protecting you. I never meant to hurt you. Protecting me." Lena laughed, bitter tears spilling down her cheeks. "You kept me like a prisoner, Matteo. I trusted you after Kyle, after everything. I thought you were different, but you're just another liar." Her voice broke raw with pain, the firelight glinting off her tears. Matteo reached for her, but she stepped back, her dress swishing Lena. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "Those kisses every moment with you. It was real. I love you." The words hit her like a punch, but they felt hollow, tainted by the contract. "Love," she spat. "You don't lie to someone you love." She turned, storming out, the fire's warmth fading behind her. That night, Lena packed a bag, her hands shaking as she stuffed clothes and sketchbooks into a duffel. She couldn't stay, not in this villa, not with Matteo's lies. She called Jada, her voice thick with tears. "I'm done." "Jay, I'm leaving for San Francisco. I need to start over." "Girl, I got you." "Jada," said her voice fierce. "Come to me. We'll figure it out." As Lena drove away from the estate, the vineyard's silver-lit rose blurred through her tears. She gripped the steering wheel, her mind flashing to a night weeks ago when she and Matteo had lain on a blanket under the stars. The crickets had hummed the air sweet with grapes, and he'd kissed her neck, his lips warm, his hands tracing her waist through her dress. "You're my safe place, Lena," he'd whispered, his breath hot against her skin. She'd melted into him, her fingers in his hair, their bodies pressed close, the vineyard fading to nothing. Now that memory felt like a knife. She wiped her eyes, the San Francisco skyline looming in the distance. Matteo's love, if it was ever real, had come too late. She was done being a pawn. In San Francisco, she'd rebuild her career, her heart, her life. But as she crossed the Golden Gate Bridge, the pendant at her neck, heavy, she couldn't shake the feeling that a piece of her was still back in that vineyard, tangled in the fire she'd tried to outrun. San Francisco's Mission District pulsed with life, its streets alive with murals splashed across brick walls, the sizzle of taco trucks and the thump of hip-hop spilling from open windows. Lena Carter had been here for 3 weeks, renting a tiny studio apartment above a coffee shop, the kind of place where the smell of espresso and fresh paint lingered in the air. The city's fog rolled in each morning, cloaking the Golden Gate Bridge in a dreamy haze, but Lena felt anything but dreamy. Her heart was a battlefield torn between the fire. Matteo Moretti had ignited, and the betrayal that had sent her running from Napa. She stood in her new jewelry boutique, Lena Carter Designs, a narrow storefront with exposed brick walls and shelves lined with her creations. Silver rings, bold chokers, earrings shaped like oak leaves. Her curls were pulled into a high bun, and she wore a mustard-yellow jumpsuit that hugged her curves, her oak tree pendant glinting at her throat. The shop was her lifeline, a dream she'd poured every ounce of herself into since leaving the Moretti estate. Her designs, inspired by the vineyard's vines and her Bronzeville roots, had caught the eye of local influencers, and the San Francisco Chronicle had called her a rising star in modern jewelry. But success didn't fill the hole in her chest. Lena adjusted a display, her fingers brushing a ring she'd designed in Napa, a silver band etched with grapevines, a piece she'd made thinking of Matteo's hands tending the vineyard. She pushed the memory away, turning up her playlist. Alicia Keys' voice filled the shop smooth and soulful, pulling her back to Chicago, to nights dancing with her mom under fairy lights. But every note reminded her of Matteo, too, the way he'd looked at her under the Napa stars, his voice whispering her name. She cursed under her breath, hating how he still haunted her. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Jada, her best friend who'd been crashing on Lena's couch whenever she wasn't slinging gumbo at her Napa restaurant. "You slaying in SF yet, girl? Don't let that Moretti mess hold you back." Lena smiled, typing back, "Slaying Jay. But this city's loud as hell." Jada's support kept her grounded. But the truth was, Lena felt lost. She'd left Napa to escape Matteo's lies, but running hadn't erased the way his touch had felt, the way his kisses had burned. The shop's bell jingled and Lena looked up expecting a customer. Instead, Kyle stood in the doorway, his tailored suit crisp, his eyes heavy with regret. Her ex, the man who'd sold her out for a Moretti contract, looked different, older, like the weight of his choices had carved lines into his face. Lena's stomach twisted, but she straightened her voice, cold. "What do you want, Kyle?" He stepped inside, hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "Lena, I just want to talk. 5 minutes." His Chicago accent, once comforting, now grated on her nerves. The shop's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting shadows on his face. 5 seconds, she said, crossing her arms, her jumpsuit's fabric soft against her skin. "Say what you gotta say and bounce." Kyle sighed, running a hand over his fade. "I messed up. The company was tanking, and Sophia Moretti offered a deal I couldn't refuse. But I never wanted to hurt you. I flew here to make it right." He pulled a velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a diamond ring that sparkled under the lights. "Marry me, Lena." For real this time. Lena stared at the ring, her heart pounding, but not with love, with fury. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the shop. "You think a shiny rock fixes what you did? You sold me, Kyle, to save your damn business. I'm not that girl anymore." His jaw tightened, hurt flashing in his eyes. "You're saying no because of Matteo, aren't you? You think he loves you. He kept you for his inheritance, same as I did." Lena's hands clenched, but her voice stayed steady. "Maybe he did, but at least he didn't look at me like a transaction. Get out, Kyle." She pointed to the door, her pendant swaying as she moved. Kyle hesitated, then snapped the box shut. You'll regret this. Lena, San Francisco's a big city, but it's not your home. He walked out. The bell jingling behind him, leaving a heavy silence. Lena sank onto a stool, her chest tight. Turning down Kyle was easy, but his words stung. Did she belong here in this city of fog and noise, or was her heart still tangled in Napa and the vineyard where she'd felt alive? She touched the vine, inspired ring on the display, her fingers trembling, and whispered, "Get it together, Lena." The next week was a whirlwind. Lena's boutique buzzed with customers, her designs selling faster than she could make them. She threw herself into work, sketching late into the night, the city's neon lights glowing through her apartment window. Jada visited, bringing a pot of gumbo and her signature shade. "You're killing it, girl," Jada said, sprawled on the couch, her braids fanned out. "But you look like you're running from something or someone." Lena sipped her wine, avoiding Jada's eyes. "I'm not running, I'm building." Jada said, smirking. "Building a wall around that heart. Don't let Matteo's mess make you forget who you are." Lena laughed, but Jada's words hit home. She was building her career, her life, but the walls around her heart were shaky. She missed the vineyard's quiet, the way Matteo's laugh had softened her edges, even if his lies had broken her trust. Then the trouble started. A blog post went viral, accusing Lena of stealing designs from a rival jeweler. Customers canceled orders, and her Instagram DMs filled with hate. Lena's heart sank as she read the comments. Fraud thief. She traced the rumor to Vivian Harper, the Moretti business partner who'd eyed Matteo like a prize. Vivian's smug face flashed in Lena's mind, her red dress and sharp tongue, a reminder of the Napa festival. This wasn't just business, it was personal. Lena was on the phone with her supplier, fighting to save a bulk order. When Malik Jackson texted Lena, "Heads up, Vivian's working with Sophia to tank you, Matteo's fighting them. But it's bad. Call me." Her pulse raced. Matteo was fighting for her. After everything, she didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. She dialed Malik, her voice tight. "What's going on?" "Malik." His voice crackled through the line. "Sophia's pissed. You left. She's using Vivian to smear you. Make it look like you're a liability. Matteo's been in her face, threatening to walk away from the estate if she doesn't back off. He's a mess. Lena, dude's barely sleeping." Lena's throat tightened, her fingers gripping the phone. "Why's he doing this?" "He lied to me, Malik. He signed that contract." "I know," Malik said, his voice soft, "but he's trying to make it right. Don't write him off yet." She hung up, her mind spinning. The shop's lights buzzed overhead, the city's hum filtering through the window. She wanted to hate Matteo, to bury the memory of his touch. But Malik's words stirred something, hope, maybe, or just stubborn curiosity. She turned off her phone, Alicia Keys' piano fading, and stared at the vine ring. Maybe it was time to face the truth, whatever it was. The next evening, Lena was locking up the boutique, the Mission District's neon signs glowing in the dusk, when the bell jingled. She turned, expecting a late customer, but Matteo stood in the doorway. No suit this time, just a navy button-down and jeans. His hair slightly mussed, his eyes locked on her like she was the only thing in the world. The sight of him hit her like a wave, stealing her breath. The shop's air felt charged, the faint scent of coffee and her jasmine perfume mingling with his cedar cologne. "Lena," he said, his voice low, rough with emotion. "I need to talk to you." She crossed her arms, her jumpsuit's fabric soft against her skin, her heart pounding. "What are you doing here, Matteo?" "The contract's still got 3 months. You don't need to check on your fake wife." He stepped inside the door, clicking shut, his eyes never leaving hers. "There's no contract. I tore it up. I told my mother. I'm done with her games. He pulled a crumpled document from his pocket, the Moretti contract ripped in half, and set it on the counter. I'm not here for the estate, Lena. I'm here for you. Her breath caught her fingers brushing the torn paper. You. What? She looked up, searching his face for a lie, but saw only pain, sincerity, and something that looked dangerously like love. I was wrong, he said, stepping closer, his voice steady but raw. I signed that contract because my mother said she'd ruin you if I didn't. I thought I was protecting you, but I should have told you the truth. Every moment with you, the kisses, the nights in the vineyard, the way you make me laugh. It was real. I love you, Lena, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if you let me. The words hit her like a storm tearing through her walls. She wanted to believe him, but Kyle's betrayal, the contract's cold words still lingered. You love me, she said, her voice trembling, tears welling. You kept me in the dark. Matteo, how do I trust you now? He reached into his pocket, pulling out the vine ring she'd left behind in Napa. He held it out his hand. Steady. Start here, he said. This ring, it's us, not the contract, not the lies, just you and me. Lena stared at the ring, her heart racing. The shop's neon lights buzzed, casting a blue-green glow on his face. The city's hum, a distant pulse. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his as she took the ring, their touch sparking like a live wire. The air between them crackled heavy with everything unsaid. I'm scared, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared too. Matteo said, his voice soft, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her, grounding her. But I'd rather face that fear than lose you. He leaned in, and she didn't pull away. His lips met hers, soft at first, a tentative question, but as she kissed him back, it deepened, urgent, hungry, like they were making up for lost time. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her close, the jumpsuit's fabric sliding under his touch, her fingers tangled in his hair, her body pressed against his, the ring clutched in her hand. The neon lights flickered, the city's noise fading, leaving only the thump of their hearts, the rasp of their breaths, the faint taste of wine on his lips. His cologne cedar and warmth wrapped around her, dizzying, and for a moment the world was just them. She pulled back breathless, her lips tingling. This doesn't mean I forgive you, she said, her voice shaky but firm. I need time, Matteo, and you need to prove it. He nodded, his eyes bright with determination. I will. Whatever it takes. His hand lingered on her waist, then dropped, leaving her skin warm. The next morning, Lena sat in her apartment, the ring on her nightstand, her mind a tangle of hope and doubt. Jada sprawled on the couch with a bowl of gumbo, raised an eyebrow. So Mr. Italian Eyes showed up with a ripped contract and a love speech. Damn, Lena. This is some rom-com shit. Lena laughed, sipping coffee, the city's fog pressing against the window. It's not a rom-com, Jay. It's a mess, but I don't know. He's different, or I want him to be. Jada smirked. You're catching feelings, girl. Just don't let him play you again. Lena nodded, but her heart was already leaning toward Matteo, toward the possibility of something real. Then her phone buzzed, a new email from a major client canceling their order, citing the design theft rumors. Vivian's name was attached, her influence spreading like poison. Lena's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about her heart anymore. It was about her future. She called Matteo, her voice steady. We need to talk. Vivian and your mom are coming for me. If you're serious about proving yourself, help me fight back. I'm in, he said, his voice firm. There's an expo in New Orleans next week. Your designs could shine there. Let's go together. Take on Vivian, my mother, all of it." Lena hesitated, the ring glinting on her nightstand. New Orleans meant jazz soul, a chance to reconnect with her roots. It also meant facing Matteo, their past, and the fire between them. She took a deep breath, her pendant cool against her skin. "Okay, Moretti, let's do this." But no more lies. As she hung up, the fog outside lifted, revealing the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. Lena didn't know what New Orleans would bring. But for the first time in weeks, she felt ready to fight for her career, her heart, and maybe, just maybe, for the man who'd torn down her walls. New Orleans wrapped Lena Carter in a warm, sultry embrace, its French Quarter alive with the wail of saxophones, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, and the spicy aroma of jambalaya wafting from corner bistros. The city pulsed with a rhythm that felt like home, echoing the blues clubs of Chicago's Bronzeville, where Lena had grown up. She stood on a balcony overlooking Bourbon Street, her red silk dress clinging to her curves, the fabric catching the glow of gaslit lanterns. Her curls bounced free, a few strands swaying in the humid breeze, and her oak tree pendant gleamed at her throat. The air was thick with the scent of magnolia and bourbon, and for the first time in weeks, Lena felt like she could breathe. She'd come to New Orleans for the International Jewelry Expo, a chance to showcase her designs and rebuild her reputation after Vivian Harper's vicious rumors. But she wasn't alone. Matteo Moretti stood beside her, his navy button-down open at the collar, his dark hair tousled by the night air. His presence was a quiet storm, stirring feelings she'd tried to bury since San Francisco. The memory of their kiss in her boutique, urgent, searing, full of promises, still lingered, making her heart race. She gripped the balcony railing, the wrought iron cool under her fingers, and stole a glance at him. His eyes, deep brown and unwavering, were fixed on the street below, but she felt their weight like he was seeing her even without looking. "This place," Lena said, breaking the silence, her voice soft but steady. "It's like Chicago, but wilder. My grandma used to talk about New Orleans like it was magic. Jazz gumbo. Second lines, she said, it's where souls come to dance." Matteo turned his gaze, softening, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I see why. It's got your fire." Lena, untamed, alive. His voice was low, rough with something that made her skin tingle. He stepped closer, the scent of his cedar cologne mixing with the city's bourbon tang, and her pulse quickened. "Don't get poetic on me, Moretti," she said, smirking, but her heart wasn't in the deflection. New Orleans was peeling back her walls, and Matteo, damn him, was slipping through the cracks. She'd agreed to this trip to fight for her career, but standing here with Jazz floating up from the street, and his warmth so close, she wondered if she was fighting for something more. The expo was 2 days away, and Lena threw herself into prep sketching new designs in their hotel suite, a charming Creole townhouse with creaky floors and velvet curtains. She and Matteo had separate rooms, but the shared living space felt intimate, charged with unspoken tension. He'd sit across from her reviewing vineyard contracts, his brow furrowed while she shaped wire into necklaces inspired by New Orleans' wrought iron balconies. Sometimes their eyes would meet and the air would crackle heavy with what they weren't saying. Lena leaned into the city's soul to stay grounded. She and Matteo wandered the French Quarter, her boots clicking on cobblestones as they ducked into jazz clubs where trumpets wailed and couples swayed. At a Creole diner, she taught him to eat crawfish, étouffée, laughing when he fumbled with the shells. "You're hopeless, Moretti," she teased, licking spice from her fingers, her red dress catching the candlelight. His eyes followed her movement, darkening, and she felt a flush that had nothing to do with the hot sauce. "Keep laughing, Carter," he said, his voice low, playful. "I'll get the hang of it." He reached across the table, his hand brushing hers as he stole a piece of cornbread, his touch lingering. The diner's jukebox played Ella Fitzgerald, her voice weaving through the chatter, and Lena's heart stuttered. She pulled her hand back, pretending to focus on her plate, but the spark between them was undeniable. Jada, who'd tagged along for moral support, kept Lena in check. Over beignets at Café du Monde, powdered sugar dusting their fingers. Jada leaned in, her braids swinging. "Girl, you're glowing," she said, smirking. "That Moretti boy's got you twisted up, huh?" Lena rolled her eyes, sipping chicory coffee, its bitter edge grounding her. "I'm not twisted, Jay. I'm focused. This expo's my shot to shut Vivienne down." Jada said, unconvinced. Focused with a side of heart eyes. "Just don't forget what he did. Love don't erase lies." Jada's words stuck, but Lena couldn't deny the shift in Matteo. He was different here, less the polished heir, more the man who'd torn up the contract, who'd fought his mother to protect her. At night, when she couldn't sleep, she'd hear him pacing in his room, his footsteps a quiet reminder that he was carrying his own scars. The turning point came at a jazz club in the quarter, where Lena and Matteo ended up after a long day. The club was dim, its walls lined with faded posters, the air thick with smoke and the wail of a saxophone. Lena wore a black off-shoulder top and jeans, her curls loose, her pendant catching the stage lights. She sipped a Sazerac, the rye whiskey burning her throat, while Matteo nursed a bourbon, his knee brushing hers under the table. The band played a slow, soulful tune, and couples swayed on the dance floor, their shadows merging in the haze. "Dance with me," Matteo said, his voice a low rumble, his hand extended. His eyes held hers steady, unguarded, and Lena felt that pull again, the one she'd been fighting since Napa. She hesitated, the whiskey warming her veins. "You sure you can keep up, Moretti? This ain't your vineyard waltz," he grinned, standing, his hand still outstretched. "Try me, Carter." She took his hand, his fingers warm and firm, and let him lead her to the floor. The music wrapped around them, the saxophone's notes curling like smoke. Matteo pulled her close, one hand on her lower back, the other holding hers, their bodies moving in sync. The club's lights flickered, casting golden flecks across his face, and Lena felt the world shrink to just them. The heat of his touch, the rhythm of his breath, the way his eyes never left hers. "You're not bad," she murmured, her lips close to his ear, the whiskey loosening her guard. His cologne cedar and warmth mixed with the club's smoky tang, dizzying her. "You're better," he said, his voice rough, his hand tightening on her back. "Always have been." His words hit deep, stirring something she wasn't ready to name. The song slowed, and he spun her gently, pulling her back until their chests brushed her pendant, cool against her skin. Her breath caught the air between them, electric. They stopped dancing, standing still as the music played on. Matteo's hand slid to her waist, his thumb brushing the curve of her hip through her jeans, sending a shiver through her. "Lena," he whispered, his lips hovering over hers, his breath warm. "I don't deserve you, but I'm not letting you go." She should have pulled away, should have remembered Jada's warning, the contract's sting. But New Orleans had her under its spell, and Matteo's eyes, raw, honest, held her captive. She leaned in, closing the gap, and kissed him. The kiss was fire, slow and deliberate, his lips soft but hungry, tasting of bourbon and promises. Her hands slid up his chest, fingers gripping his shirt, feeling the heat of his skin beneath. His hands roamed her back, tracing her spine, pulling her closer until there was no space left. The saxophone wailed its notes, matching the thump of her heart. The club's smoky haze blurring the world. She tasted whiskey on his tongue, felt the press of his body, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. Not the lies, not the pain, just this. She pulled back, breathless, her lips tingling. We're playing with fire, Matteo, she said, her voice shaky, her hands still on his chest. Then let it burn, he said, his voice low, his eyes blazing. He kissed her again, briefer, but no less intense, and she let herself fall into it just for a second before stepping back, her heart racing. We need to focus, she said, smoothing her top, trying to steady her breath. The expo's tomorrow, Vivian and your mom, they're coming for me. He nodded, his jaw tight, but his hand lingered on her arm, warm and steady. We'll face them together. I'm done letting my mother control us. The expo was held in a grand hall in the Garden District, its chandeliers glittering, its tables lined with jewelry from designers worldwide. Lena's booth was a hit, her vine-inspired rings and Creole-inspired necklaces drawing crowds. She wore an emerald green dress that hugged her curves, her curls pinned up her pendant, shining. Matteo stayed close, his presence a quiet anchor, his eyes scanning the room for trouble. Trouble arrived in the form of Sophia Moretti. She swept in, her silver hair pinned in a bun, her black dress exuding power. Vivian trailed behind, her red lipstick sharp as a blade, her eyes locking onto Lena with a smirk. Miss Carter, Sophia said, her voice cold. You've made quite a splash. But scandals have a way of sinking even the brightest stars. Lena's jaw tightened, but she held her ground, her dress catching the chandelier light. If you're talking about Vivian's lies, save it. I'm not scared of you or your gossip. Sophia's smile was thin, predatory. You should be. Leave Matteo, or I'll ensure your little boutique never recovers. You don't belong in our world. Matteo stepped forward, his voice low. Dangerous. She belongs wherever she chooses. Mother and I choose her. He took Lena's hand, his grip firm, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Before Sophia could respond, an older man approached, Giovanni Moretti, Matteo's grandfather, his eyes kind but sharp. Enough, Sophia, he said, his voice carrying weight. I created the marriage test to see if Matteo could build a family, not to destroy one. Lena's shown more heart than you ever have. He turned to Lena, smiling. Your designs are remarkable, young lady. You remind me of my wife. Fierce, unbreakable. Lena's throat tightened, Giovanni's words warming her. Thank you, she said, her voice soft but steady. Sophia's face paled, but she said nothing, turning and leaving with Vivian in tow. The crowd buzzed, and Lena felt a weight lift her hand, still in Matteo's. The expo continued her designs, winning a major award, the applause echoing in her ears. But Vivian wasn't done. She whispered to a reporter, planting new rumors, and Lena knew the fight wasn't over. That night, Lena and Matteo retreated to their hotel suite, the tension of the day melting into something softer, more dangerous. The room was lit by candles, their flames flickering against velvet curtains, the scent of magnolia and bourbon filling the air. Lena stood by the window, her green dress pooling on the floor now in a black slip, her curls loose. Matteo approached, his shirt unbuttoned, his eyes dark with need. Lena, he said, his voice a low rumble, stepping close. You were incredible today. You always are. She turned her pendant, catching the candlelight, her heart pounding. We're not out of the woods yet, Matteo. Vivienne's still out there. Your mom. We'll handle them, he said, his hand cupping her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Together, he kissed her, and the world dissolved. His lips were soft, urgent tasting of bourbon and longing. Her hands slid under his shirt, tracing the lines of his chest, feeling his heart race. His hands roamed her back, slipping under the slip straps, his touch searing her skin. The candles flickered, their golden glow dancing on the walls, the saxophone from a distant club weaving through the night. Her breath hitched as his lips trailed to her neck, warm and deliberate, her fingers tangling in his hair. The room spun the air thick with magnolia and desire, but she pulled back, breathless, her voice shaky. "Matteo, if we do this, it's real. No more games." "It's real," he said, his voice raw, his hands framing her face. "You're my home, Lena, always." She nodded, her heart open, and kissed him again, slower, deeper, a promise sealed in the candlelight. They didn't go further, not yet, but the fire between them burned brighter than ever. The next morning, Lena woke to a text from Luca. "Moretti, Matteo's cousin. I'm done with Sophia's games. I have proof. Vivienne faked the rumors. Meet me before the expo closes." Her pulse raced. Luca, the spiteful cousin who'd exposed the contract, was offering help. It could be a trap, but it was a chance to end this. She showed Matteo his jaw, tight. "We'll meet him," he said, "but we do it together." As they prepared for the final day of the expo, Lena felt a shift. New Orleans had given her clarity, strength, and maybe against all odds. Love with Matteo by her side, and Luca's potential alliance, she was ready to face Sophia Vivienne and whatever came next. The city's jazz played on a reminder that souls could dance even through the darkest nights. The New Orleans sun bathed the garden district in golden light, casting long shadows across a courtyard draped in magnolia blossoms and white silk ribbons. The air hummed with the scent of jasmine and the faint twang of a jazz quartet warming up their trumpets, weaving a melody that felt like a heartbeat. Lena Carter stood in a small room off the courtyard, her reflection glowing in a gilded mirror. Her wedding dress, a creation of her own design, hugged her curves in soft white silk, its bodice embroidered with delicate vines that paid homage to the Napa vineyard where her story had begun. Her curls were pinned up, a few tendrils framing her face, and her oak tree pendant rested against her chest, a symbol of the strength she'd carried from Bronzeville to this moment. Lena's hands were steady, her heart full. This wasn't the fake wedding that had trapped her in Napa 6 months ago. This was real, her choice, her love, her vow. She thought of Matteo Moretti waiting for her under the courtyard's oak tree, his eyes that had seen her through lies and fire, his hands that had held her through every storm. A smile curved her lips, warm and sure. She wasn't the uncertain bride she'd been. She was Lena Carter, designer fighter, and now a woman ready to claim her future. Jada Williams, her best friend, bustled into the room, her emerald green dress shimmering, her braids adorned with gold beads. "Girl, you look like a damn queen," Jada said, adjusting Lena's veil, her Chicago accent thick with pride. "You sure about this Moretti boy? I can still get my chef's knife if he steps out of line." Lena laughed, the sound bright, easing the butterflies in her stomach. "I'm sure, Jay. He's not perfect, but he's mine, and I'm his." Jada smirked, handing her a bouquet of magnolias. "All right, but I'm keeping that knife sharp. Let's get you married." The International Jewelry Expo had been a triumph. Lena's booth, filled with designs inspired by New Orleans soul and Napa's vines, had won a prestigious award, silencing Vivienne Harper's rumors. But the real victory came before the expo closed, when Luca Moretti, Matteo's cousin, met them in a quiet cafe off Jackson Square. Luca, once spiteful, had looked weary. His blonde hair mussed his eyes, heavy with guilt. "I was wrong," he'd said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "This is proof. Vivienne faked the design. Theft claims, emails, receipts, all of it. I'm done with Sophia's games." Lena had stared, stunned, as Matteo took the drive, his jaw tight. "Why now, Luca?" He'd asked, his voice low, guarded. Luca shrugged, a bitter smile on his lips. "I'm tired of being the family's attack dog. You're a better man than me." Matteo. Always have been. He'd left his footsteps fading into the quarter's hum, and Lena had felt a weight lift. The proof cleared her name, and when she and Matteo presented it to the expo organizers, Vivienne's credibility crumbled. Reporters turned on her, and her whispered threats dissolved into nothing. Sophia Moretti was another story. She'd stormed into the expo's final day, her silver hair gleaming, her eyes cold. "You've humiliated me," she'd hissed at Matteo, ignoring Lena, walking away from the estate, choosing her over your legacy. Matteo had stood tall, his hand in Lena's, his voice steady. Lena's, my legacy. "Mother, you can keep the estate. I don't need it to be a Moretti." Giovanni, his grandfather, had watched from the sidelines, his smile proud, and nodded at Lena, a silent blessing. Sophia had faltered her composure, cracking. Later, in a private moment, she'd approached Lena, her voice low. "I underestimated you," she'd said almost grudgingly. "Protect him. Lena, he's all I have." It wasn't an apology, but it was enough. Sophia left New Orleans the next day, her power over them broken. The courtyard was a vision, its wooden tables adorned with magnolia petals and bottles of Moretti wine, a nod to the vineyard where Lena and Matteo had found each other. Guests filled the space. Jada radiant and teasing, Malik Jackson, the vineyard manager, grinning in a sharp suit, Giovanni, his eyes misty with pride. Even Luca was there, quiet but present, a sign of his tentative redemption. The jazz quartet played a soft tune, their notes floating like a breeze, and the air buzzed with laughter and anticipation. Lena stepped out, her dress shimmering under the sunlight, her bouquet clutched tight. The crowd hushed, but her eyes found Matteo standing under the oak tree in a deep blue suit, his hair neatly combed, his gaze locked on her like she was his entire world. Her heart swelled, a warmth spreading through her. This was no contract, no scheme, just love chosen and true. As she walked down the aisle, Jada whispering, "You got this, girl." Lena felt every step ground her in certainty. She reached Matteo, his hand taking hers, his fingers warm and steady. "Lena," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're more beautiful than I dreamed." She squeezed his hand, her smile teasing. "Don't make me cry before the vows." Moretti. The ceremony was intimate, their vows written from the heart. Lena spoke first, her voice trembling, but clear. "Matteo, I thought love was a trap, a game I'd never win. But you showed me. It's a risk worth taking. I choose you today, tomorrow, every day." Matteo's eyes glistened, his voice steady but raw. "Lena, our first marriage was a twist of fate. This one's my heart's choice. I promise to love you, fight for you, and burn every damn pasta dish if it makes you laugh." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Lena grinned, her heart soaring. They exchanged rings, the vine-inspired band Lena had designed now, a symbol of their journey. Matteo slid it onto her finger, his touch lingering, and she did the same. Her hands steady, the officiant pronounced them married, and Matteo pulled her into a kiss, deep and passionate, his lips warm, his hands framing her face. The crowd cheered, but Lena only heard the thump of her heart, felt the heat of his body, tasted the faint sweetness of wine on his lips. Her fingers tangled in his hair, her dress brushing his suit, and the world faded to just them, sealed in a moment of fire and promise. The reception unfolded under a setting sun, the courtyard glowing with fairy lights, and the jazz quartet shifting to upbeat swing. Guests danced among the tables, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. Lena and Matteo moved through the crowd hand in hand, her dress catching the light, his smile brighter than she'd ever seen. Jada pulled her onto the dance floor, twirling her to a Louis Armstrong classic, while Malik taught Matteo a two-step the vineyard manager's grin infectious. As the night deepened, a slow song began, the saxophone weaving a sultry melody. Matteo found Lena, his hand extended. "One more dance, Mrs. Moretti," he said, his voice low, teasing. She raised an eyebrow, taking his hand. "Don't get cocky, Mr. Moretti." He pulled her close, their bodies swaying under the fairy lights, her head resting on his chest, his heartbeat steady against her ear. The scent of his cologne, cedar, and warmth mixed with the courtyard's jasmine grounding her. "You know," she whispered, "I used to hate that vineyard. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Matteo tilted her chin up, his eyes soft. "And I can't imagine my life without you, Lena." He kissed her, slow and deep, his lips tracing hers, his hands sliding to her waist. The fairy lights twinkled, the music a soft hum, and Lena melted into him, her fingers brushing his neck, her body pressed close. The kiss was a vow, a promise of every night to come, and she felt their love burn brighter than the stars above. They slipped away from the reception hand in hand to a private suite Matteo had prepared in a nearby Creole mansion. The room was a haven of candlelight, its walls draped in velvet, a bottle of Moretti wine on a small table. The scent of pine and magnolia filled the air, the candle's golden glow dancing on the walls. Lena stepped inside her dress, trailing behind her, heart racing. "Matteo," she whispered, turning to him. "When did you plan this?" He closed the door, his eyes never leaving hers, his voice low. "I wanted tonight to be ours. Lena, no past, no contracts, just you and me." He stepped close, his hands framing her face, his breath warm against her skin. He kissed her neck, soft and deliberate, his lips trailing to her collarbone, sending shivers through her. Her hands slid under his jacket, feeling the heat of his chest, her fingers tracing the lines of his muscles. The candles flickered their light, casting shadows on her skin, as Matteo's hands glided down her back, untying the dress's delicate straps. The silk slipped to the floor, pooling at her feet, and she stood in a lace slip, her curls falling loose. His eyes darkened, his voice a whisper. "You're everything, Lena." He kissed her deep and hungry, his tongue brushing hers, his hands pulling her close, her fingers tangled in his hair, her body pressed against his, the room spinning with the scent of wine and desire. The saxophone's distant wail matched the rhythm of their breaths, the candle's glow blurring the world. They fell onto the bed, their bodies entwined, his lips exploring her shoulders, her chest, each touch igniting a flame. Lena's hands roamed his back, pulling him closer, her voice a soft moan. "Matteo," she whispered, her pendant cool against her skin. "Don't let me go." "Never," he murmured, his lips against her ear, his hands steady, loving. They moved together, not just in desire, but in a silent promise. Their love, a fire that burned away the past. The night was theirs, a dance of whispers and touches sealed in the candlelight's embrace. Dawn crept in, painting the room in soft pinks. Lena lay in Matteo's arms, her head on his chest, his heartbeat a steady rhythm. The candles had burned low, their wax pooling on the table. "What did we just do?" "Moretti?" She teased, her voice playful, her fingers tracing his jaw. He kissed her forehead, his voice tender. "We lived, Lena, and we're just getting started." His smile was warm, his eyes bright with love. They decided to stay in New Orleans for a while, renting a small Creole cottage, where Lena opened a jewelry workshop, her designs, blending Napa's vines with the quarter's soul. Matteo started a modest vineyard, his hands in the earth, his heart. With her, Sophia, though furious, couldn't touch them. Giovanni's blessing and Luca's proof had stripped her power. The Moretti estate was no longer their cage. One evening, they sat on their cottage's porch sipping wine, the stars glittering above. Lena leaned on Matteo's shoulder, her pendant catching the moonlight. "You know," she said, "I used to think fate screwed us over. But now, I think it led us right here." Matteo took her hand, slipping the vine ring onto her finger, his touch steady. "Fate started it, Lena. We wrote the rest." He kissed her sweet, but fiery their love, a promise that no storm could break. The future was unwritten, full of dreams and challenges, but Lena and Matteo faced it together. Their hearts entwined their story, a melody that would echo forever. The fiery love story of Lena and Matteo has reached its heart-melting end, but their journey lives on. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment with your favorite moment, and join us for more epic romances that'll keep you hooked. Let's keep the love alive.